All right, moving on. Part 3, we're going to talk about the expansion of the South. Okay, so talking about Texas here. So Moses Austin, he received a land grant and Mexican citizenship when he moved to the region of Texas, that is, after Mexico was granted independence in 1821 by Spain. His son Stephen followed him, so I'm sure you've heard of Stephen F. Austin, and received approximately 180,000 acres, which he sold to newcomers being other Americans. All right, in 1835, nearly 30,000 Americans that are white and some black slaves were living in what is today eastern and central Texas. So Stephen F. Austin led the Peace Party of settlers who accepted Mexican rule, but wanted political autonomy for Americans in the region. Their war party wanted independence. So basically, you have all these Americans that are given permission by Mexico, given land, to live in Mexico, and then they decide they don't want to be part of Mexico anymore. So they are going to fight for independence, and that has the biggest air quotes on them in the world. So it's not like they were a conquered territory or anything like that. They voluntarily moved there. They voluntarily moved to Mexico, and basically now they're usurping the land for the United States. So you do have political differences that are going to continue between the Americans and President Santa Anna, who basically wants to impose his authority throughout Mexico, well, because he's the president, and this is part of Mexico. On March 2nd, 1836, the war party begins a rebellion, supported by the Americans in Texas. After they were defeated at the Alamo and San Antonio, newspapers published romantic descriptions of the fighting men and called for Americans to remember the Alamo. So additional Americans do come to Texas to fight under General Sam Houston. April of 1836, you have the Battle of San Jacinto, which led to independence. The debate begins in the United States over whether to annex Texas, which was desired by the Texans. That was their initial thing, is they want to be part of the United States. But President Martin Van Buren, after Andrew Jackson, is not interested in adding Texas to the United States at that point in time. So that is why they are forced to create their own republic, because they're not a territory. They have declared their independence from Mexico and won that land from them. And so now they'll have to come up with their own government and whatnot. And so they will create a republic and we'll become our own country for several years. All right, so you can see Republic of Texas, 1836 to 1845, so for about 9 years. The rest of the land that is now Texas and part of New Mexico was claimed by Texas between 1836 and 1850. Mexico disagreed, all right? They did not agree that that was land that the Texans had. We will win that land in the Mexican-American War in 1848, though, so it will no longer be contested at that point. We will take it from Mexico then. All right. So the debate is going to continue in Alabama over taxation. Democrats want to lower the taxes. Whigs want higher taxes to provide subsistence for banks, canals, and roads, because that's how you buy these things that the government provides, is through higher taxes. The Whigs are going to appeal to basically the common people. The Alabama legislature appeals to slave owners who had money and power in the state. So between 1830 and 1860, 70% of the state revenue came from taxes on slaves and land. Alabama was viewed as a state that taxed democratically. More often, Yemen bore the burden of taxation in southern states. So today, Alabama is actually a pretty poor state, but it does seem that at one point that was not true. So in the South, you have two extremes. You have your extreme hardship, poverty for African Americans, and the poor white farmers and whatnot, and the poor landless people, versus the wealth and the prosperity for white planters. They had a higher per capita income among whites than France and Germany. Compared to the North, a lower standard of living. They focused on land and agriculture and not on new technology of the 19th century. So factories, machine tools, steel plows, crushed gravel roads, water and steam-powered factories were all part of life in the industrial North, but not so much in the South. Urban growth in the North is limited in the South to New Orleans, St. Louis, and Baltimore, so the big cities that are on rivers. Few immigrants come to the South because of lack of opportunity. So largely your immigrant population will go to the North where the factories and things are. By 1860, some 84% of Southerners still worked in agriculture. And that will continue after the 1860s. Agriculture will be a way of life for a while. Okay, so that gets us into the last part, or the end of the third part. We've got one more part to go. So I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. Talk to you soon.